welcome to Music Mania. I'm your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, just as always, and this week we have yet another eventful week to talk about, but not just because of new releases, because there's not a whole ton of new releases to talk about, but rather because there's also some things that I didn't notice came out last week before I recorded last week's video. Last week's video, I gotta say, I definitely recorded a little bit ahead of time if I had waited literally just one day to record that video, because I was early on that one. I was a lot earlier getting that one done than I normally am. If I'd waited the one day like I normally do for that one, I would have had a lot more to talk about last week than I already did. But I guess that would also mean I would not have as much to talk about this week. So let's just kind of jump into things and start off with the two albums released last week that I didn't catch, that I didn't know about ahead of time. So let's get started. First off is going to be Underoath's new album, The Place After This One, which probably not going to have super popular opinion with this one, and that's because I'm not a huge Underoath person, I gotta say. That's not even to say that like I have a ton of experience with them, because I don't, but I feel like I've heard snippets of their stuff over, the years, the past decade, as I've kind of like explored more with metalcore. This was one of those bands that was like a classic that I'd heard a lot of great things about, but I think the snippets that I had heard, I was like, I'm not sure if I'm into that, largely because of the vocals, and whatever instinct told me that that was how I would feel was largely correct, at least as far as this album is concerned. I don't recommend The Place After This One because I don't know. I feel like the musicality of it was fine. It wasn't awful. It wasn't offensive. In fact, there were several moments that were like actually pretty good, like musically, but I just couldn't find myself enjoying the actual album itself to any significant degree. So like it's just fine. I think the album's fine. I don't think it's bad, I should say. It's not bad, it's just not for me. And that's where I fall with this. And I feel like I'm probably going to end up falling that way with Underoath as a whole, no matter how many times I give them a chance. I got to go back and listen to some of their classic stuff, some of their popular stuff, things that people really like overall, but I'm not too sure that I'll enjoy any of that either. The other release that I forgot about last week was Life Energies by Unsolicited. Unsolicited is like the side project of the drummer of Born of Osiris, and when I learned that, I was like, okay, I'll give that a shot, and did, and I enjoyed myself. Unfortunately, however, this album wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, because the first like half of it is really good. The second half of it is good in a different way. It's kind of a situation similar to the new Rumor album from earlier this year. I believe that's the name of the band. It's a situation of the first half being super strong, doing what it's doing really well, but then it going a totally different direction for the back half that doesn't really meld with the first half very much, where both sides of it are good but don't really form a cohesive whole. And that's how I feel about Life Energies. The first half is great, the second half is a lot more vibey in a completely different way, that knowing that I'll enjoy it more on various re-listens, because I know I'm going to re-listen to more of this instrumental music as I do a bunch of writing stuff the next couple months, sorry. But yeah, this album was one that like I wanted to like it more. It's close to being rated higher. I definitely would have rated it a lot higher if the first half was indicative of how the whole thing went, but unfortunately that wasn't really the case. So that's how I felt about that. But now let's move into actual new releases for this week. There's only a couple of them to talk about. The first one of those is Bodies by Thornhill, and this is going to be a situation, I guess, somewhat similar to Underoath just now, in that Thornhill's one of those bands that in around 2019 to 2020, that alongside Loathe and Knocked Loose were some bands in the sort of core sphere with a little bit of like hardcore energy sometimes, but less so in the case of Thornhill, but maybe the 2019 album was that way. I don't properly remember. These were three bands that were blowing up a lot in the circles that I was in, that were really popular, that a lot of people really enjoyed for a ton of reasons, but that I just did not enjoy at all. So like I let it in, and it took everything, or whatever it's called by Loathe, The Dark Pool by Thornhill, whatever that blue album cover album by Knocked Loose were all albums that was like I wanted to enjoy them because everyone else did, but I just didn't. But I decided to give Thornhill another try with this new album because I was hearing some good things, and I'm glad to say that I actually got through this one entirely. I don't think I actually listened to all of The Dark Pool before I gave up on it, but it's still not for me, I gotta say. It's 3 stars, so it's not like a terrible rating. The moments that are good, the moments that stand out, I really do enjoy. But there's other parts of it that don't really work for me. I think the clean vocals in particular mostly don't work for me as far as Thornhill is concerned, and that brings down a lot of the songs. There are a number of good songs, and my favorite songs are the ones that utilize the clean vocals to the best degree. Only Ever You and Silver Swarm are the standout examples here, but overall, it's just kind of okay. Again, I think it's more a case of this album isn't bad because the people that are enjoying it are really enjoying it. The people that Thornhill is for really like this. It's just not necessarily for me, so that's where I fall with Bodies. The other new album release this week is A Scapegoat for a Throne, and I guess it's not even really an album, to actually be honest with you. This is more of an EP, so I guess we'll jump into the EP section here because it's only 7 songs. It's like maybe 20 minutes or something like that. I don't even remember how long it is, but it is not long enough nor with enough songs to properly be called an album, so I'm actually going to call this an EP. I think this is good. If you enjoy core, you're going to enjoy this. The main problem that I have with this that brings it down from 4 stars down to 3.5 is that there are a couple songs that are mixed that have like volume and other sound post-production stuff going on that don't sound as good as the other songs, like the second song in particular, the second full song, Ego Death, and I think Echo Stay was the other example of this, of tracks just having weird mixing that like made them quieter than the rest of the songs, so you had to turn up your volume up 1 for it to sound the same, and then it didn't even sound the same, and like just some weird mixing stuff. But as far as the actual musicality, I enjoyed this album a good bit. I'm not personally really huge on the unclean vocals specifically, as far as like the actual tone of it, the way that it sounds, as a matter of my personal taste, but I think it's the type that a lot of people really enjoy in this type of music, so I definitely recommend A Scapegoat for a Throne for something that's really short and easy to get through, despite some of the mixing issues on like 1 or 2 of the songs. But I did enjoy the EP. The other EP that released this week is a little bit more of a memey one. That is Sales Ends, the EP of Silence. And for whatever reason, and we'll see this a little bit more with some of the new singles this week, that for whatever reason aren't loading for me. So I'm going to actually just try to refresh this page and see if it'll actually go. Yeah, see, it just has a 404 page not found. And then couple of singles that we're going to talk about this week have the exact same thing going on, so I can't properly rate them right now. I don't know what's going on. Musicboard's just kind of broken to the degree that like, well, that worked. Okay, that one has a 404 page not found. So like there are some of these reviews and some of these singles and stuff from certain artists that just aren't coming through for some reason, and I don't know why. Even so, EP of Silence is definitely a meme thing for the band Sales End. Danny DeBella is part of this project. I think Daniel Salins is the other main one here that make up this project at this point. It started off just Daniel Salins, I believe, and then DeBella joined later. But this is a collection of 5 songs that are all titled The Sound of Silence, and they're nowhere near like The Sound of Silence that you think of when you hear that title. And they're all just kind of meme songs, you know? You have The Sound of Silence, which is like a minute long of just a really goofy, memey, over-the-top heavy metalcore track. And then you have The Sound of Silence 2, Electric Boogaloo. Then you have 3, which is just called 3. And then you have 4, which is called Forklift Certified, with forklift spelled with literally 4 there. And then Revenge of the Fifth, that's the 5th song. I gotta say, the 4th and 5th songs are actually decent songs. The other 3 are a little bit more meme than they are like legitimately great in and of themselves. So if I were to rate the EP of Silence, which I can't here, I would give it 3 out of 5. And then my review basically says, I recommend this for the meme factor of it. If you enjoy metalcore and you enjoy, you know, people doing something a little bit goofier with it, something that's not so self-serious, I recommend the EP for what it is. Even if it's not necessarily the best thing in the world, the EP's worth a chuckle. So if you want to chuckle, then go ahead and give it a listen. I think it's fun in that way. But now we're going to move into the couple of singles for the week, and the first one of those is Anthracite by Humanity's Last Breath, but this is another case of like I just straight up could not get it to load or work. It'd just be a 404 page not found. I think I would give this song like a 2.5 out of 5. I think it's fine. I'm not a huge Thal person, but as far as Thal goes, even Humanity's Last Breath isn't an example of a band that I really like in this regard. I think Ashen was a solid album. It made my like my passing mentions or whatever for 2023, my list of that, but it wasn't something that I loved. It was something that opened me up to the idea of thought a little bit more, but was overlong. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more of some of the singles that these guys haven't going on, here in the near future. But Anthracite wasn't fully for me, so probably a 2.5 out of 5 on that one. The other single would be Sawed Off by To the Grave, whereas Forced Diet Reassignment was, I think, maybe my least favorite single of 2025 so far. I did not like that song, like, at all. I think Sawed Off is definitely a lot more solid. I would probably actually give Sawed Off a 3 or maybe even a 3.5 out of 5. But this is another one of those situations of page not found for some reason. I don't know what's going on with Musicboard, but something about it is a little bit goofed. We're getting off track. The new single's pretty good, but I can't rate it on here at the moment. Otherwise, we're going to move into my listens. Or actually, that's a lie. We have another new single that I can actually rate. Baby Metal and Poppy doing a joint release from Me to You, which I thought was good. If you enjoy either one of these artists, you're going to like the song. And I think that Poppy's dynamic with the band actually totally works for this track. So, it's good. That's all I'll say about that. But now we're going to actually move into my listens and talk first about an album that I actually listened to like right after I finished recording the last one of these videos. That's Opera by Flesh God Apocalypse, an album that I feel pretty fondly for because I listened to it the first time when I was still like really reeling from my grandfather's death late last year. And it really connected with me then. If I were to give this album a more proper rating, it would probably be more like 4 out of 5, but because of that emotional impact, that emotional connection, I give it 4.5 out of 5. It's a solid album. I really like it. I think it's fun. I think it's dynamic. I think it's interesting. And it has a place in my heart because of what it reminds me of at this point. So I re-listened to that at last weekend just because I felt like I wanted to, and it had been several weeks since I had wanted to give it another listen, so that's what I ended up doing. I also re-listened to Shapeshifter by Memphis May Fire again. I think it's solid. I think I enjoyed it less on this re-listen than I did either the first couple times I listened to it, but it's still solid. I think like if you're just a fan of modern metalcore, even though this is pretty generic, I think it's totally fine doing what it is doing. I like it personally. And then I listened to a lot more Wide Eyes, re-listening to albums while doing writing stuff. So Paradoxica I listened to a couple times, re-listened to Underoath and Volume as well, which will move me into like, at this point, I've talked about all of Wide Eyes' albums properly. I haven't talked about the original version of Terraforming from 2015 yet, but I'll get to that at some point. But I felt like at this point, I should just actually do the Wide Eyes discography deep dive thing in this video here and say I very highly recommend Wide Eyes. They're definitely my favorite instrumental artist. Even though they have a couple albums that are a little bit weaker, like Samsara is just a 3 out of 5, but that most of that is because of the mixing rather than the actual quality of the music itself. I think if they did a remaster of that, it would easily be 4 out of 5. Basically everything these guys have done, I love. And I think these guys are the artists that I've listened to the most in my entire time listening to anything on Spotify. At the very least, I've definitely listened to these guys more than anybody else. And maybe not necessarily more than anybody else in my entire life, but they're probably getting up there at this point, and it'll probably only be like a year before they actually have reached that point. I just really love Wide Eyes. And then I also did, the discography ranking here. Like I said, Samsara is easily their weakest piece. It's probably their weakest musically, but the main reason why I like it the least is because it has the worst sound. Volume remastered is good. It's definitely very good proof of concept for what the band's music is, even though it's in the form of way many songs, and most of them being a little bit shorter, where I tend to prefer when they have longer tracks. Terraforming, I included both versions in this ranking because I do think the Redux sounds different enough from Terraforming, despite being the same album outside of the intro being a little bit extended. And I think the intro of the Redux is actually worse than the intro of the original, but I think the two albums themselves sound different enough to justify including both of them. And I like the way the Redux sounds more than the original because it's more in line with their Oneironaut type of sound mixing, which is my favorite one of their things, and which I technically, overstate by giving a 6 out of 5. That's not a typo. I do that on purpose. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. So, that's my opinions on Wide Eyes there. And now that we've done that, we've done everything that I need to talk about for this week. So this video was a little bit lengthier than I think I wanted it to be. Sorry about some of those releases there in the middle, not being able to do anything with them because of the 404 page not found thing. I don't know what's going on with the Musicboard to cause that. I really don't. But even so, I enjoyed my music listening this week, and I suppose I should give a warning now at this point at the end of the video, actually. I don't know how frequently I'm going to be doing these Music Mania videos for the next month or two because of how busy my work and other schedule is for the next little while. Probably not going to have time to do one of these Music Mania videos every week. There's definitely going to be some weeks where it's just too hard to do so. And that means that the next one of these videos, I might be able to get one out next week. That it's definitely a possibility that I could do that. In fact, it's probably a good possibility that I will be able to do that. But the week after that, I'm not so sure about. I'm probably going to be too busy to actually produce a video then, and we'll see what I'm able to do from then all the way through the end of May. Basically, don't expect Music Mania videos every Monday for the next couple months because it's going to be too hard to actually fit that bill, and I'm not necessarily sure that I'll have enough time to even listen to all of the new music, let alone be able to make a video on it. So we'll see how things go. I'm hopeful that I'll still be able to follow at least a bi-weekly schedule like opposite Fortnite on the Isle on my main channel, but no promises. We'll see what happens, but definitely not promising that I'll be able to get through all of that because it's going to be difficult. Either way, thank you guys for watching this video. If you did, I really appreciate it. For now, I've been your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and I hope to see you guys in the next video, whatever that is and whenever it is as well.